Our lesson today is about the sum and the difference between two angles. I want to prove that sine A plus B is equal to sine A cosine B plus sine B cosine A. So here we have a triangle and we have the angle A and the angle B. And before we start, what is the sine A? Sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So sine A is y over z. And sine B is the opposite over hypotenuse is W over X. What about cosine A? Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse V over Z. And cosine B, the adjacent over hypotenuse. In this triangle, the adjacent is V and the hypotenuse is X. So cosine B is V over X. What if I asked you about the area of the triangle? Actually, we have two rules to find the area of the triangle. The first rule is half base times height. And the base here is W plus Y. And the height is V. So we are going to write half the base, and the base is defined as W plus Y multiplied by V. Or we can find the area by using the rule we have studied before, which is half the product of two adjacent sides. So the two adjacent sides here, let's take X and Z, the side X and the side Z, okay? So half X plus Z, half X, times Z, half the product of two adjacent sides, multiplied by the sine of the angle between them. And the angle between them is A plus B. So half X multiplied by Z multiplied by sine A plus B. And the two rules give us the area of the same triangle. So they are equal. So half multiplied by X multiplied by Z sine A plus B equals half the base W plus Y multiplied by V. We can cancel half and half from both sides. So we are left with XZ sine A plus B equals, we have here W plus Y multiplied by V, so we can multiply the V by the brackets, so it's W V plus Y V. I want to get rid of XZ. So divide both sides by XZ. When dividing by XZ, we are going to get sine A plus B equals W V divided by XZ plus YV divided by XZ. If we went back to the previous trigonometric functions we have found for A and B, the angle A and B, we'll find that W over X gives us sine B. W over X here, W over X gives us sine B. So we can write instead of that sine B, and V over Z, V divided by Z here, V divided by Z is cosine A. Plus, we have here Y V over XZ. Y divided by Z is sine A, okay? And V divided by X is cosine B. So we can rearrange it and write it as sine A plus B equals sine A cosine B plus switch them off sine B cosine A. That's it. What if I want to find sine A minus B? We can write instead of A minus B, A plus minus B. And we can apply the rule, which is sine A, the first angle, and the second angle, cosine the second angle. So sine A cosine negative B plus sine the first angle, sine negative B, because we wrote here sine A. So we are going to take the next angle, the second angle, which is sine negative B cosine A. So sine first, cosine second. Here is the first angle and cosine the second angle plus sine second angle multiplied by sine first angle that we have proved in this rule here, sine A plus B. You know, cosine cancels negative. So cosine negative B is cosine B. And sine negative B is equal to negative sine B. So I wrote instead of sine negative B, negative sine B, and cosine A as it. So we reach to a conclusion, which is sine A minus B, the difference between two angles, is equal to sine A cosine B minus sine B cosine A. That's it. What if I want to find cosine A plus B? Cosine A plus B. You know, cosine A plus B, we can write it as sine 90 minus A plus B. You know, sine 90 minus theta is equal to cosine theta. And theta in this case is A plus B. So I wrote instead of A plus B, cosine A plus B, it's the angle. I wrote instead of that sine 90 minus A plus B minus the angle here. And sine 90 minus A plus B is cosine A plus B. And then expand, multiply this negative by the brackets, it will be minus A minus B. We can take 90 minus A as an angle. Okay, here it's the first angle, 90 minus A. Plus, here it's minus B. Now we have two angles, and now we have sine. Here it's the first angle, and here it's the second angle. We can apply the rule of the sine, which is sine the first, cosine the second. Sine the first angle here, cosine the second angle, negative B, plus sine the second angle, okay, multiplied by cosine the first angle. You know, I switched them off. Sine first, cosine second, plus sine second, cosine first. 90 minus A, sine 90 minus A is cosine A. And cosine negative B, cosine cancels the negative, so it's a cosine B. And sine negative B is equal to negative sine B, and cosine 90 minus A, 90 minus A and cosine, so it's going to be sine A. So we reach to a conclusion, which is cosine A plus B is equal to cosine A cosine B minus, we can rearrange it and write sine A sine B. So if you have cosine, the sum of the two angles, okay, any two angles, so write to cosine minus, we have here plus, so write minus, sine. So let's say we have cosine x plus y. So cosine x plus y is going to be cosine x cosine y minus sine x sine y. And if we have cosine A minus B, we can write instead of A minus B, it's A plus minus B. It's the same. A plus minus B, the same as A minus B. And we can apply the rule. Cosine angle plus angle. So cosine the first angle, cosine the second angle. And because we have here plus, so we are going to write minus. Just I changed the sign, as I proved in the previous rule. Sine first, sine second. You know, cosine negative b, cosine cancels the negative, so it's a cosine b. And sine negative b is equal to negative sine b. Then multiply negative by negative, so it's a positive. So cosine A minus B is equal to cosine, don't forget. Because we have here minus, so change the sign and write plus, sine. Cosine the first angle multiplied by the second angle. So it's cosine A, cosine B, plus, I change the sign, sine A, sine B. That's it. If I want to find the tan A plus B, the sum of the two angles, so tan in general is equal to sine divided by cosine, whatever the angle is. So here the angle is A plus B, so we are going to write sine A plus B over cosine A plus B. Then write the rule of the sine. Sine A plus B equals sine A cosine B. Sine first multiplied by cosine the second angle, plus sine second cosine first, all divided by, write the rule of the cosine. Cosine A plus B is equal to cosine A cosine B minus, just I changed the sign, sine A sine B. Then divide the top and the bottom by cosine A plus B. So I divided here the top and the bottom by cosine A plus B, all terms in the top and all terms in the bottom. I divided all of them by cosine A cosine B. Let's tidy it up. Sine A divided by cosine A here is equal to tan A. And cosine B, they are going to be cancelled. And here we have cosine A and cosine B, they have been cancelled. And you are left with sine B, cosine B. So it's a plus sine divided by cosine, sine B divided by cosine B, it's a tan B. All divided by, here we have cosine A and cosine A, cosine B, that is equal to 1 minus sine A divided by cosine A. Sine A divided by cosine A is equal to tan A. And sine B divided by cosine B is equal to tan B. Then we reach to a conclusion, which is tan A plus B is equal to tan A plus tan B over 1 minus tan A tan B. And also you can prove that tan A minus B will be equal to tan A minus tan B, all divided by 1 plus, just change the sign here, 1 plus tan A tan B. You can try to prove tan A minus B. So we have two rules for the sum and the difference of two angles. Here tan A plus B and here tan A minus B. Prove that sine 2a is equal to sine a cosine a. Look at the angle. Here it's 2a, and here the angle in front of sine it's a, and in front of cosine is a, the half of the angle. So we can write sine a plus a, the sum of the two angles. And I wrote, instead of a plus b, I wrote a plus a. Then we are going to apply the rule. Sine a plus a, the first and the second angle, but in this case they are the same. So that's equal to sine a cosine b plus sine second. And here we don't have b, so it's cosine a plus sine second. The second is a, so sine a. Cosine first, cosine a. Sine a cosine a plus sine a cosine a, that's equal to 2 sine a cosine a. So sine 2a equals what? Equals 2 sine a cosine a. And from that, if I asked about sine 4a, is equal to what? Is equal to sine, and take the half of the angle. The angle is 4a, so write 2a cosine 2a. And sine 10a is equal to what? Yes, it's a 2 sine 5a multiplied by cosine 5a. Just take the half of the angle here. Here it's 10a. And also cosine 2a. You know cosine 2a, we can write cosine 2a as cosine a plus a. And then we are going to apply the rule, which is cosine a cosine a. They are the same, minus. Don't forget minus. Change the sign. Sine first angle, sine a. Sine the second angle, sine a. So cosine 2a, a plus a is 2a, is equal to cosine a, that is equal to cosine squared a, minus sine a multiplied by sine a is equal to sine squared a. Okay, that is the rule of cosine 2a. And we know that sine squared a plus cosine squared a equals 1. And from that, we can substitute cosine squared a. Cosine squared a is 1, just move it to the next side. So cosine squared a is equal to 1 minus sine squared a. Then we are going to write, instead of cosine here, we are going to write 1 minus sine squared a minus sine squared a. That is equal to 1 minus sine squared a, and minus sine squared a is equal to minus 2 sine squared a. And also we can write the rule again, and cosine 2a, which is equal to cosine squared a minus sine squared a. And we are going to substitute sine squared a. Sine squared a is equal to 1 minus cosine squared a from this rule here. So that is equal to minus, and write instead of sine squared a, 1 minus cosine squared a. Then expand, multiply this negative by all terms inside the brackets. That is equal to cosine squared a minus 1 plus cosine squared a. So cosine 2a is equal to, here we have cosine squared a, and cosine squared a equals 2 cosine squared a minus 1. Then we have two rules for cosine 2a. That is the first rule. And here the second rule. Or here the third rule. So cosine 2a is equal to what? Is equal to cosine squared a minus sine squared a. Or we can write it as 2 cosine squared A minus 1, or 1 minus 2 sine squared A. Okay. If I asked you about cosine for A, okay, just take the half of the angle. The half of the angle is 4A, so it's cosine squared 2A minus sine squared 2A. Or we can write it as 2 cosine squared 2A minus 1, or 1 minus 2 sine squared 2A. What about tan 2A? You know tan 2A? We can write it as tan A plus A. Then apply the rule. The rule we have learned. It's tan first plus tan second over 1 minus tan the first angle multiplied by tan the second angle. So that is equal to tan A plus tan A, which is equal to 2 tan A over 1 minus tan A multiplied by tan A, it's tan squared A. That's it. So tan 2A is equal to 2 tan 2A is equal to 2 tan A over 1 minus tan squared A. If I ask you about tan, let's say 10A, you know 10A is equal to, this 2 is constant, it's a 2. 10 and take the half of the angle. The angle is given as 10A, so it's a 2 tan 5A over 1 minus tan squared, take the half of the angle, which is 5A. That's it. You know that cosine 2A is 1 minus sine squared A. Look at the angle here, it's a 2A. And look at the angle here, it's the half of the angle, it's A. What if I ask you about cosine A? You know cosine A? It's 1 minus 2 sine squared. Take the half of the angle. The half of the angle is A over 2. We can move it to the next side and move this to this side. So 2 sine squared A over 2 is equal to what? Is equal to 1 minus cosine A. I want to get rid of this 2, so divide by 2 both sides. So sine squared A over 2 is equal to what? 1 minus cosine A all divided by 2. I divided by 2 both sides. What if I want to find sine A over 2? So take the square root. So that's going to be positive or negative. A square root of 1 minus cosine A over 2. Once again, cosine 2A is equal to 2 cosine squared A minus 1. Look at the angle again. Here we have the angle is 2A, and the angle here is A, the half of the angle. And if I'm going to write cosine A, so cosine A is equal to what? Is equal to 2 cosine squared A over 2 minus 1. And from that, 2 cosine squared over A over 2 is equal to move negative 1 to the next side. So this is going to be 1. So it's 1 plus cosine A. And then divided by 2 both sides. So cosine squared A over 2 is equal to 1 plus cosine A over 2. Then to find cosine A over 2, it will be equal to positive or negative. Positive or negative. The square root of 1 plus cosine A over 2. And if I want to find tan A over 2, you know tan A over 2 is equal to sine A over 2 over cosine A over 2. And sine A over 2, as we proved, it's the square root, it's positive or negative. The square root of 1 minus cosine A over 2, all divided by positive or negative, the square root of 1 plus cosine A over 2. So positive or negative divided by positive or negative is going to be positive or negative. And write one square root for both of them. And when dividing, keep it change flip. So that is going to be 1 minus cosine A over 2. And flip here this, because we are dividing, it's 2 over 1 plus cosine A. So we ended up with tan A over 2 is equal to positive or negative. The square root of cancel 2 and 2. So you are left with 1 minus cosine A, all divided by 1 cosine A. I hope you enjoyed this session. See you in the coming episodes. Goodbye.